And we are live. Welcome to Olivia's Stories, ladies and gentlemen. Life is unpredictable because a single mistake has ruined my life. Nothing makes sense to me anymore. How I wish I could turn back the hands of time. How I wish I never attended the family Christmas party. How I wish I never got drunk that very night. But it's too late now. Life seems to be turning against me. It's a very painful story, and I don't know how to tell the story without feeling very bad. The horrible mistake I made has destroyed my whole life. Hi guys, my name is Cynthia and I'm a 28-year-old hairdresser. I'm married to a pilot. His name is Scott. Scott and I have been married for 2 years now. We met 2 years ago, and ever since it's been a fairy tale until I made a terrible mistake a few months ago. Scott is every woman's dream man, handsome, tall, kind, and caring. Sometimes I wondered what he saw that made him fall in love with me. Scott's dad didn't want him to get married to me. He tried matchmaking him to different ladies, but Scott refused and chose to be with me. He practically changed my life within a short period. He is a perfect gentleman. I always describe him as my soulmate. He is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. That's why I can't forgive myself for accidentally kissing his dad. Don't judge me, guys. I was drunk. Everything happened so fast that I don't even know how it happened. It still feels like a dream. How could I make that kind of mistake? Scott's dad has always been the villain in our love story. I will be referring to him as Mr. Alex, not his real name though. I want to keep his identity private because he is a popular businessman. Mr. Alex, Scott's dad, never liked me. He always told me I wasn't good enough for his son. He always called me a gold digger who came to reap where I didn't sow. He always wanted Scott to marry one of his friend's daughters, but Scott declined. Mr. Alex never misses any opportunity to remind me how low class I was, and I'm not worthy of being his daughter-in-law because I wasn't from a rich home. My parents were just retired civil servants. Mr. Alex never misses any chance to tell me he doesn't like me. That's why it hurts so much that I let my guard down around him. I can't even believe I kissed him. It still feels surreal. Thinking about it now, it was disgusting. Everything happened so quickly. Scott and were invited for his family Christmas party. Scott was very excited because his father stopped talking to him ever since we got married. Mr. Alex went as far as not attending our wedding. So you can imagine how thrilled Scott was when he got the invitation to the party. He was also asked to bring me along to the party. Initially, I didn't want to attend because I know I will not be welcomed. But Scott insisted we attend. He told I might never get this type of opportunity again and that his family is beginning to accept me. He said I should use this opportunity and get to meet everyone because it's the holidays and everyone will be around. I reluctantly agreed to attend the party, but I wished I never did. I wished I stood my ground and just slept at home on that fateful night. I love Scott so much, I could never tell him no. Scott has been through a lot because of me. At a point I was all he had, because his family disowned him because of me. I know how much me attending the party means to him. He has always wished for me to get along with his family. Scott was so excited about the party that he cleared his schedule so we'll be able to attend the party together. He bought me expensive dresses, shoes, and jewelry to complement the looks. We arrived at the party early because he wanted to introduce me to everyone before the party started. He introduced me to his relatives, friends, and colleagues. Everyone was excited to see me except for Scott's immediate family. His mom always accused me of breaking the family and taking away her only son. His sisters never liked me just like their father. So they were all cold towards me. They barely answered my greetings. I, on the other hand, decided to just enjoy the party because I got tired of trying to get their attention. I got so carried away that I got so drunk. Everything was going so well until I went to the restroom. Scott never wanted me to go alone, but I convinced him I wasn't that drunk and that I could take care of myself. I was lying, guys. I didn't want him to miss out on the family reunion. He was so happy catching up with his cousins that I didn't want him to miss anything. It's been a long time since I saw Scott that happy. That's why I didn't want to ruin it for him and decided to go to the restroom alone, even though I was very drunk. On my way to the restroom, I met with Scott's dad, and he asked me to come to his room for a brief chat. I told I wanted to use the restroom, and he told me that he has a toilet in his room and that I could use the one in his room. I was reluctant at first, but I still followed after, imagining how happy it would make Scott when he found out I had a talk with his father. I followed Mr. Alex to his room, and surprisingly, he didn't have any meaningful things to say. He was just blabbing about how I took his only son from him. The next minute, he started caressing my hair, and for a minute, I forgot myself. And the unthinkable happened. I kissed him, guys. I don't know what came over me. I don't know why I didn't leave the room when I found out he didn't have any meaningful things to say. I don't know why I didn't stop him from caressing my hair. I was so drunk that I didn't have control over how I was acting. For a second, I thought Mr. Alex was Scott. I guessed it was the alcohol. I ran out immediately. At the moment, I knew I had messed it up. What surprised me is that Mr. Alex didn't try to stop me from kissing me. He just stood still with his hands raised up. The reason I followed Mr. Alex to his room in the first place was because I thought he wanted to apologize for how he had treated me for the past 2 years. I didn't know he was just setting me up. I ran back to the party room as fast as my legs could carry me. Scott was already looking for me everywhere. He asked me where I was coming from, and I told him I was coming from the restroom. He said he came to the restroom, but I wasn't there. I had to lie to him that I went outside briefly for some fresh air. Somehow he knew I was lying. I could tell from how he was staring at me. Everything happened so fast that I didn't even have time to think about what had just happened. I just made the biggest mistake of my life. I can't believe I kissed my husband's dad. How do I bring myself to explain everything to him? What would happen after he found out I kissed his dad? All these were the thoughts running through my head. I didn't know what to do. I was confused and devastated. All through the rest of the party, I wasn't myself, and Scott noticed. He asked what was wrong with me, and I lied to him that I was just tired. My heartbeat increased when he asked why my lipstick was a mess. I had to come up with something quickly. I told him I bumped into someone on my way from the restroom. Everything happened so fast that I didn't even put myself together. Scott saw how uncomfortable and disorganized I was as asked, we leave the party immediately. It was a silent ride back home. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept wishing I never went to that party. I couldn't believe everything that had just happened. It felt like a dream. I thought everything would go away in the morning, and that I was just having a bad dream, but I was wrong. It was in the morning that the reality of what I have done hit me. I felt bad, Scott. I couldn't believe I betrayed his trust. He literally fought with his entire family, especially his dad, just to be with me. I felt bad for betraying him. He doesn't deserve this. I felt terrible, guys. I wanted the ground to open so I could disappear. I wanted everything to just go away, but how? I wanted to run away because the more I saw Scott, the more guilty I felt. I decided to confess everything to Scott and be free from guilt. While I was planning on confessing everything to Scott, I got a call from Mr. Alex, Scott's dad. He asked me to come and see him alone if I wanted to save my marriage. I didn't want to go, but at that point I was desperate. I told Scott I wanted to hang out with my friends and went. He asked us to meet in a hotel, but I insisted we must meet in an open place. He asked me to meet him in the office then. I arrived at his office and I met him in a meeting. His secretary asked me to wait at the waiting room and that the meeting would soon be over. After the meeting was over, Mr. Alex called me in. He had this mischievous smile on his face. I have never seen him smile before. He never smiled at me before, so it felt kind of strange. He offered me coffee and I refused. I asked him why he wanted to see me and he said he wanted to save my marriage. He asked me what I intend to do after what happened at the Happy. I told him I was planning on confessing everything to Scott. He told me I shouldn't do that, because Scott might never forgive me. He told a man can lose everything but never his ego, that Scott's ego would be broken when he finds out I kissed him. He gave me 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't confess everything to Scott. He told me telling Scott everything will break their family, and how he misses his son and he doesn't want to lose his only son. He said he wanted his family back and that his family would never be complete without Scott. He practically begged me not to confess to Scott. He also told me he has accepted me fully as his son's wife, as he is tired of fighting Scott because of me. He told me he sees how happy Scott is with me, and nothing else matters to him than his only son's happiness. Everything he was saying felt too good to be real. I couldn't believe my ears. I've always dreamed of the day Mr. Alex would finally accept me as his daughter-in-law, but I never envisioned it to be this way in manner. I was happy and sad at the same time. I wasn't comfortable with the idea because Scott and I promised to never lie to each other. We promised to always tell each other the truth, so I was a bit reluctant. Mr. Alex promised me that no one would hear what happened that day if I decided to follow his advice. I agreed to keep everything to myself and not confess to Scott. That was another wrong decision. I wished I never listened to Mr. Alex. I wish I just followed my instincts and confessed everything to Scott. I became a shadow of myself. I was always lost in thought. The guilt was eating me up. One day, Scott got a call from his dad. He was so excited because that was the first time his father was calling him in 2 years. His dad invited Scott and I over for dinner at their family house. Scott was excited. He was jumping up and down like a baby that was handed candy. He asked me to get ready so that he would pick me up after work. I didn't want to go because seeing his dad would make me relive that bad memory. But I didn't want to say no either because Scott would suspect something is wrong. He has already started suspecting me. I didn't want to add to it. So I decided to go to the family dinner with him. We arrived at the family dinner, and everyone was hostile to me as usual. Mr. Alex ignored me and went straight to embrace Scott. He told him he had an announcement to make after dinner. For some reason, I felt uneasy. Deep down, I knew whatever announcement Mr. Alex wanted to make wasn't going to favor me. At that moment, I just wanted to confess everything to Scott, but he was busy having a discussion with his mom. I didn't want to interrupt them because I knew how much they missed each other, so I waited. The next minute, Mr. Alex stood up and nothing prepared me for what happened next. The embarrassment I got that day is still fresh in my memory. The next thing I saw on the TV screen was a video of me kissing Mr. Alex with his hands raised up. While I was still trying to make sense of what was happening, the conversation I had with Mr. Alex at his office was also played, but the conversation was doctored. It was at that moment I realized that everything was properly planned. The video only showed when I kissed Mr. Alex, and not the beginning of everything. It was then I understood why he raised his hand while I was kissing him. He was just trying to pass a message. Even our recorded conversation was doctored to suit the narrative he was trying to pass. Mr. Alex went on to lie to everyone about the event that transpired between us. He told them how I tried to seduce him because I wanted money, and how I came to his office the following day to beg him not to disclose what happened to Scott. Guys, I was too stunned to speak. I couldn't believe my ears. Scott was speechless. I saw tears in his eyes and I felt sorry for him. Everyone looked at me with so much hate. I felt so sorry for Scott. I ran to him to explain everything to him, but he refused to listen. He left angrily. I tried to run after him, but Scott's mom stopped me and slapped me. He asked me why I had decided to destroy his poor son's life, and that I even went as far as kissing her husband. She threw me out after raining curses at me. I was mute all through. I couldn't even utter a word. I took a cab and went home. To my greatest surprise, Scott wasn't at home. I waited for him all through, but he never came home that night. The following morning, he arrived and started throwing my things out. I tried explaining everything to him, how it actually happened, but he didn't believe me. He said he has seen enough evidence, and I cannot manipulate him any longer. I told him how everything happened, but he still paid deaf ears to everything I was saying. He told me how he regretted the day he met and wished he never went against his family for me. I explained to him how his dad set me up and he is trying to break us apart. He refused to listen. All efforts to calm him down were in vain. He even went as far as setting my things on fire. He burnt all my clothes and documents. He told me he was done with the marriage and I should get out of his life for good. While I was still trying to plead with him, the lawyer arrived with divorced papers and I was forced to sign the divorce papers. Scott threatened to leak the video on social media if I don't sign the divorce papers. I got scared and signed it. After signing the divorce papers, he threw me out of the house and threatened to ruin my life completely. I left the house empty-handed. He didn't allow me to go with anything. I was practically chased out like a cheap prostitute, and I tried reaching Scott severally, but he never gave me a listening ear. I got so tired that I finally decided to accept my fate. I decided to go squat with my friend till I'm able to stand on my feet again. I was penniless. Scott made me stop working immediately after our marriage. He provided everything I needed, so I didn't have a single penny to my name. I got the biggest shock of my life when my parents called me crying that they were homeless. Apparently, Scott had chased them away from the house he bought for them a year ago. Listening to my parents cry over the phone broke me into pieces. I didn't know what to do. My parents sold their old house 2 years ago so they could pay for my brother's tuition. This was before I met Scott. My parents were retired civil servants. They couldn't afford to train my little brother and sister at the same time, so they had to sell their house and move to a shared apartment. A year ago, Scott gifted my parents a newly built house. How could he chase them away from the house he willingly gifted them? At that point, I started developing a strong hatred for him. How can he ruin my life because of a single mistake? Not just my life, but he is also ruining my parents' life. Scott also did another terrible thing. He stopped paying for my brother's school fees. My brother was in an aviation school. His fees were expensive. That was why my parents sold their house in the first place. Scott started paying my brother's school fees after we met and promised my parents that he would make sure my brother graduates, because my brother was at the verge of dropping out before Scott stepped in. He also gives my siblings pockets money. He also canceled the knee surgery he booked for my dad and took his back. One by one, he started destroying everything he has ever done for me. I couldn't believe he was capable of such an act. If someone had told me Scott was that heartless, I would have bet with all my heart that it was a lie. Nothing made sense to me any longer. Everything escalated quickly. I didn't know what to do. My parents were homeless. My brother has been sent off school because Scott informed the school authority he wasn't going to be his sponsor any longer. My parents had to move back and continued living in a shared apartment. Life never made sense again. Everything felt like a dream. I decided to go look for a job in a saloon, but the pay was so little. I decided to just accept the job when I got tired of moving around and looking for a job. Few months later, after the divorce was finalized. Sorry guys, I forgot to mention. I didn't get alimony because Scott and I signed a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. I was the one that suggested the idea because I didn't want to seem like I was getting married to him because of his money. But I still regret that decision till today. It was a foolish move. So, a few months later, Scott married again. This time to the lady his dad chose. I heard the lady is the daughter of Mr. Alex's friend. Guys, I'm sobbing as I'm writing this now. My life never remained the same after that Christmas party. I wish I never got drunk at that party. I couldn't believe my marriage of 2 years had ended and that my husband is married to another woman now. How can Scott punish me for something I didn't have control over? I was drunk. It wasn't a conscious decision. But I don't blame. He only acted based on what he saw. I still blame myself for everything that happened. I take full responsibility for everything that happened, deep down in my heart. I know Scott would have forgiven me if I'd confessed everything to him immediately. I mean, he saw how drunk I was. He would have understood I was under the influence of alcohol. Everything wouldn't have gone so bad if I hadn't listened to Mr. Alex's stupid advice. A chameleon can never change. I don't know how I foolishly fell into his trap. When Scott and I got married 2 years ago, I never knew a day would come when we would get divorced. I thought it was going to be a forever thing, so that one would have thought that Scott's obsession to destroy my life would stop after he got married. But that's wrong. One day, I woke to my phone binging with notifications. My battery got flat in the process that I had to power it up. I opened my phone and I saw different tags. Apparently, Scott and his family had uploaded the video of me kissing Mr. Alex. The video was on every blog. People that knew me were calling me. The video was tagged the gold digger that tried to seduce her father-in-law. Of course, the face of Mr. Alex was perfectly covered, while mine was exposed. Everyone was calling me names and judging me. It got so bad I had to resign at the hairdresser salon because people started recognizing me and mocking me. I'm leaving every single day in regret. Update. One would think that I have suffered enough, right? Well, guess what, guys? That's not true. People would come to the saloon just to abuse me and call me all manner of names. Tears became my food. I cried to bed every day. I never thought Scott was serious when he vowed to destroy my life. I thought it was just empty threats. I never knew he was going to upload the videos. I got so tired of everything. I couldn't breathe very well. I was exhausted. I thought everything was just a horrible nightmare and that I would soon wake up. But that never happened. Every day, I only prayed for strength to live. My parents and siblings were the only will I had to live. I wish Scott nothing but the best. I know he acted out of anger, and his anger is justified. He only acted based on what he saw. Maybe if I had confessed everything to him, things would have been different. But I know it's too late now. Even if Scott finds out the truth today, I know we can never be together again, because he is already married to someone else. Maybe we were never really destined to be together forever. I will cherish the few years of our marriage forever. I chose to remember only the good because he is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and our marriage was beautiful while it lasted. That's my story, guys. I hope we learn from it. Don't ever keep anything from your partners, and don't ever get married to anyone that the parents don't approve of you. It will always end in tears. At the end of the day, those people will make sure they frustrate you in the marriage. Another free advice is please never sign a prenup, ladies. Please don't be a fool like me. Lowell. Thanks and goodbye.